after all, are their rights.
Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Ms McVey. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I'd like to add my thanks to my honourable friend, the member for Edmonton, for securing this vitally important debate on the latest report by Wendy Williams. My honourable friend delivered a powerful and moving speech, and so did so many other honourable friends for Battersea, Hackney North, Streatham, Birmingham, Erdington, Sheffield Brightside and Sheffield Hallam. And I was moved and humbled by much of what we heard today. The personal experiences, the family connections, the profound hurt and disrespect that was shown to a generation that helped to rebuild this country after the Second World War. It's a stain on our conscience, Madam Chair. It is a stain that has not been adequately dealt with, and that should shame us all, because we all in this House should be united around the need to show that generation that did so much for us, that worked so hard, that paid their taxes and were treated so abysmally. And I do have to gently say to the Minister that given the cross-party nature of these concerns, it is quite disappointing that there's not been a single contribution from the Conservative Party from the backbenches to this debate. Madam Chair, the Wendy Williams report is a damning indictment of the culture at the Home Office. And the sad reality is that this report has been published at a time when the government, rather than learning the lessons from the Windrush scandal, is doubling down on its hostile environment policy and mindset. And perhaps worst of all, none of the government's policies in the area of immigration are actually designed to solve any of the challenges that we face. In fact, they're just for show. The Rwanda plan is not putting people off crossing the channel. We were told that the mere threat of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda would be enough, yet hundreds of people are still coming every week on small boats. And even if a flight does one day get off the ground, the numbers will be so small that the policy will not deter and will not break the business model of the people smugglers. As has been said, the Nationality and Borders Act is profoundly lacking in any basic human decency. And the government has no answer to the growing 73,000 backlog of asylum seekers waiting for more than 6 months to be granted a decision. And these examples are directly relevant to the topic of today's debate because of the message that they send to the Windrush generation. The hostile environment is alive and kicking in the Home Office. And these strong-arm approaches, of course, are all designed to create Daily Mail headlines and to keep the Prime Minister in power. In policy terms, they only make the situation worse, as these attempts to, quote-unquote, crack down on those who have sought to make a home here have caused so much unnecessary pain in so many of the areas that we have heard in the powerful contributions from my honourable friends today. And these examples are, of course, also indicative of the type of culture change that we need to see at the Home Office, as emphasised in the Williams report, which makes clear that we need to treat every individual as a human being and not just slap a number on a forehead, or worse, use them as a political football. And here, please allow me to associate myself with all of the comments that have been made about the compensation scheme. The decision to place the compensation scheme in the hands of the Home Office was a grave error. The Windrush generation has absolutely no reason to trust the Home Office, so how can anyone possibly be surprised that they are reluctant to even apply for compensation, as we've seen from the very low numbers who are applying? Responsibility for the scheme must therefore be handed to an independent organisation, and I can confirm that I will do everything that I can as the Shadow Minister for Immigration, working with my colleagues here and beyond, to push for this to happen as urgently and immediately as possible. The Williams report also makes clear that the Home Office needs to open itself up to external scrutiny. Ministers shouldn't be marking their own homework. The report also is clear on the point that culture change is simply not happening quickly enough. In her foreword, Wendy Williams says, "My hope for the future is that the department acknowledges the efforts of its staff and the achievements it has made so far, but also recognises there's still a great deal to be done." She later writes, "The failure to implement changes promptly and consistently is a common thread running through the revisit, and that there are many examples where the department has not made progress at the pace it envisaged, or in some cases at all. The lack of progress on training is also a concern because, and I quote, alongside internal training, there is the failure to make progress on certain outward-facing activities, such as senior-level engagement with those affected and stakeholder engagement. But equally concerning is the pace of developing wider external scrutiny arrangements. Wendy Williams also makes clear that the culture at the Home Office is not conducive to positive change. The lack of progress goes to the heart of how the department operates and is indicative of an organisation which was not yet confident enough to secure an increase in the type of independent insight and scrutiny that my recommendations envisaged, she said. This is all extremely worrying, Madam Chair, and external stakeholders are not impressed either. The report says that the majority of external stakeholders who chose to take part in the revisit believe that little, if anything, has changed. This view is also held by some of the people I spoke to in my original review, who expressed scepticism about the department's progress. Wendy Williams therefore feels that the concerns voiced remain deep-rooted and will have to be addressed if the department is to truly transform the way it engages with those who were affected. Finally, the report makes clear that all these years later on, government ministers are still yet to show that they understand the true extent of the wrong and the harm which has been done to the victims of the Windrush scandal. All of this is very damning, both in terms of the specifics of Home Office incompetence and indifference and the broader issues around the hostile environment. Madam Chair, I'm deeply concerned that we are not witnessing the changes that we need to see inside the Home Office. I've long said that the Home Office is not fit for purpose under the current Home Secretary, based on their failures over crime levels, prosecution rates, the English Channel crossings, the Passport Office, and the Afghan and Ukraine migration issues. But the failures on Windrush go to the very heart of the wretched culture encouraged by consecutive Conservative Home Secretaries. So I will today put to the government the very questions that Wendy Williams puts in her report. How will the department demonstrate to the Windrush generation it has changed and can show improvements on how it carries out its duties? How will the department demonstrate a focus on outcomes rather than outputs to assure itself it's made the necessary changes? How will the department show that its culture is improving? What measures will it use to check that it's brought all staff with it? How will the department harness local initiatives and goodwill and scale them up to demonstrate to its workforce that it is a learning organisation? How will the department be more dynamic in its efforts to develop, achieve and retain a more diverse and inclusive senior leadership cadre? How will the most senior leaders convey to the whole organisation what the priority is in terms of the culture? How willing is the department to hear from a range of voices, whether supportive or opposing? And how will the department demonstrate that it is truly taking action to continuously improve in order to rectify some of the scandalous decisions and acts that have taken place? The Minister today has a prime opportunity to answer all of these questions head on. I truly hope that he will grasp that opportunity. Thank you.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Ms McVey. It's a pleasure to serve with the team and understand the work they're doing. I understand the two was... Certainly, go ahead.
Before he moves off the point of the compensation scheme, he'll know that at the end of January, only 960 people had, let me just get this right, yes, had applied to the scheme, which is only about 20% of those eligible. Those are the statistics that are mentioned in the Home Affairs Select Committee report that he just mentioned on the compensation scheme. So does he agree with me that putting the compensation scheme into the hands of the Home Office, the very institution that's so profoundly mistrusted by the Windrush generation, was a grave error. And the only way that this is going to get sorted is by moving it out of the Home Office and into an entirely independent organisation.
I must say, Madam Chairman, I'm not sure where the shadow member gets his figures from. He's